Today, joining me, I've got Andrew Smith, who's the CEO of Yuppie Chef. Used to be Yuppiechef.com. It's just Yuppie Chef. He's also, well, they are the National Business of the Year for Top Digital Company at last year's awards. So welcome, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good name, eh? Business Unusual. Would you agree?
It is an unusual time. I heard a great, one of our team members came up with the line Corona Coaster, or maybe it wasn't her line, but really it has been very high highs and very low lows in the last few months, but here we are doing our best to keep going.
For sure. So, I mean, just getting into it, obviously, one of the great things about your organization is you've kind of sort of made it in digital, made it in e-commerce. And I know you've got some views on that. And then you've pivoted to retail. I worked in retail for about 5 years. So I know how exciting, addictive, and fun it is. But I suppose the first thing on mind is how are you coping with the current situation with the lockdown? Is it something that's sort of on hold at the moment? Where are you seeing retail?
It's quite interesting that you asked that question now, because obviously we've had stores for about 3 years now, and in those 3 years I would get asked all the time about opening stores. And in the last 3 months, stores have either been closed or it's just all been back talking about e-commerce again, because that's where e-commerce has taken such a huge, around the world and in South Africa, a massive jump forward in these 3 months. So now kind of talking about stores and why we open stores feels a little bit out of date and a little bit archaic, because it does seem like the world has shifted again. And when the lockdown started in South Africa, which I think was the 27th of March, somewhere around there, our stores all closed and then opened again on the 1st of June. So that was a long period where we were back to being 100% online, 100% digital company. And where we were at that time, we have 7 stores at the moment, 2 in Johannesburg and 5 in Cape Town. But our online sales was still the majority of what we were doing. And so when we go from, when the stores close down, well, then when they open again, but people are a bit more reticent to go out into particularly the big shopping centers and things, our online was already a big part of our business. And so that's seen a lot of growth. And what you see with a lot of other retailers in South Africa is that retail is maybe 1 or 2 or 3%. And so even if it triples for them in this kind of COVID time, heading into post-COVID time, it's going from 1% to 3% or 2% to 6%. It's not enough to see them through this time. For us, because online was still the majority before, we're in a healthy position. But it is obviously where we now have to decide how much is this accelerated and where we're at. We've opened stores for the last 3 years, but it looks like this year we won't open any stores because there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things happening in the market, and even now with a lot of retailers who haven't opened back up again. A lot of little guys who've just decided that's it, they're done, they're not going to renew the leases, or they can't afford to come back, or they're finished. And then you've also got big retailers taking the strain, and Edgar's probably being the biggest example of South African retail where we're going to see a major shift coming. So the reticence to push forwards too strongly in a physical retail right now is certainly a short term, but longer term, I don't know, is there going to go back to something? How much has changed in the
That's what I want to ask you.
I thought you had the answer to that question. No, we have to. Well, we've been trying to survive. That's what the last three months is like just how do you get through this day to day, where we go in the longer term. That obviously needs some more planning and thought.
And surviving at the moment, I mean, obviously it's not just you, it's your partner, but your team. I mean, how did you? And I know that you pivoted fairly quickly. You reached out to like restaurants and you were selling other goods, and it's pretty impressive what you've done already. I know it must have been stressful because I've been in a similar type of situation. What was your game plan? What was your sort of strategy with the team? How you did that? What you decided to do? Was there a plan?
Well, there were plans, but I mean, things changed so quickly. We had the plan, I suppose, was to adapt and adjust as quickly as we could, and to do that every day. It's been the hardest work that I think any of us have ever done, because on the many more wounds. So as the lockdown was announced, in those first few days, we didn't actually know what was going to be allowed, and I think Friday was the first day of lockdown. We went to zero, nothing, and then we kind of tried to see what was happening, and it seemed apparent that you could sell food and cleaning goods. That was allowed under what we now call level 5 of lockdown. And so we had to then rapidly change our site and our systems and everything to allow the sale of just a certain subset of products. So that was the first thing that we did. And I think by about the Monday or the Tuesday after lockdown, we could open back up again and say, these things you can buy and we'll ship them to you now. These other things, we'll still let you check out and pay for them, but we'll only be able to ship them to you after lockdown. Remember those days when we thought there was such a thing as after lockdown, because we didn't necessarily that time know where it was going to go. So we had a major shift in the systems and things to allow that to happen. But food and drink and cleaning products was a tiny piece of our business. It's certainly not the majority. So we wanted to try and add to that. And the first thing that we added was, as you said, the supply to the restaurant industry. So one of our suppliers who supplied a few things to us, but the majority of their business was ingredients to top-end restaurants, and they're called Wild Peacock. And what I think you found a lot during this time was that you've got a supply and you've got a demand, but the links between them have been disrupted and broken. So people still are eating food, but a portion of what we ate used to be through restaurants. And now none of it could be through restaurants, but that supply still exists, but people still have the same amount of calories that they need to ingest. So how do we kind of reconfigure the pipes to get that supply to the customers? And so we hooked up with Wild Peacock. They've got refrigerated trucks, and they could then deliver straight to customers' homes, fresh food and meat and mussels and oysters and all sorts of things that we would not be able to do, but we kind of tasty. And I think you saw that across. I mean, there was a worldwide shortage of yeast. And I don't think that that's because the world was necessarily eating more yeast. But if you think of how yeast is consumed in the market, all the pizza chains, they will probably buy yeast in like 1,000 kg bags, when you and I buy yeast in the supermarkets in like a 10-gram bag. So you've got the supply, which is those suppliers can't suddenly shift and get it into our house, because now we're making our own pizza instead of buying it from the shops. So I think there's been a lot of opportunity in the last few months for people who've been able to connect the supply with the demand in new ways. And obviously e-commerce and online businesses are businesses that are able to adapt quite quickly, because you're not having to kit out a whole storefront or multiple storefronts around the country and change the supply. You can kind of reconfigure your website and plug those together. So you've obviously seen a boon in that. So that was in the first few weeks, and then as the different layers of lockdown unfolded, we then could turn on more of our range. And then we hit the real chaos of just the operational difficulties of we'd taken a lot of orders during lockdown, telling customers we'll ship it after lockdown. And then when we were allowed to, on the day that e-commerce is now, go for e-commerce, I think we got 900 emails in one day, people saying, where's my order? Like today, you're now allowed to deliver it. So where is it? And obviously, we still had immense
customer service. So you had big shoes to fill.
It was a really challenging time, because we never like to dealing with customers. We never like to pass the blame onto. We're not going to blame the supplier or the courier company or anything. It's our fault. We're responsible. But the reality was that we had this incredibly disrupted supply chain. We deal with 400 suppliers of our products, our goods locally, and they were in all sorts of states of trying to deal with getting their workforce back and who was allowed to come back and who of them had comorbidities and old people and couldn't come back and so just getting the stock that we needed into our business was really complicated. And then our own operational difficulties of getting people into work and creating multiple shifts so we could split the team up and providing their own transport, because there wasn't any public transport, and all of the safety protocols and all of that. And then once it gets out of our building, handing it over to the courier companies, and they had their own difficulties and they had their different sort of problems. And so we disappointed a lot of customers, and we still are. I mean, there's still many disappointed customers out there, and that has been one of the hardest things for us to deal with.
How do you resolve those unhappy customers at the moment? I mean, how you, because you're not in the business of blaming, but obviously you have to do something. So what are you doing?
Well, I think that what it exposed for us primarily is which parts of our business weren't able to scale. So, the first thing, you can only apologize so much. You got to get the thing to the customer's door, and so, or you got to respond to what they're asking, and those are the two main things. So we made a lot of changes just in our warehouse and the way that operates. We don't normally have to scale in like a June, July time, and often the way that we scale is we bring in lots of temporary workers, but you don't want to do that during a pandemic. You don't want people you don't know coming into your building. So we had to be a lot more careful about how we brought extra hands in and how we were able to scale without just throwing more people into one physical space. So trying to look for efficiencies in our operations, and then from a customer support side as well, bringing on extra people to answer those customer queries in a way which is we've got to get people up to speed very quickly and figure out how you can kind of chunk those things up into. Normally our customer service agents can handle any type of query, but that's not very scalable because then you have to train someone of how to handle any type of query. So it's having to kind of break it down into buckets of work, that if I train you, Ralf, just how to answer this type of query, and then I give you that bucket of queries and you can answer those. So we've had a rapid period of scaling.
So expertise in problems, really, that you trained on expertise and how to deal with those problems. Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of breaking down I think this is the principle of scale is you kind of break things down into a repeatable process, and then if I need to scale this part up 3 times but this part only up 1 or 2 times, I can do that separately, rather than just saying, well, we just have people who can do everything. It's trying to kind of create sort of buckets of speciality that you can scale. And bearing in mind that a lot of our customer support and a lot of our fulfillment was now happening through the stores. With our 7 stores around the country, that's where a lot of customers were getting their problems solved, and during lockdown, the real lockdown, April and May, that wasn't happening. So we had this kind of major shift in how we could answer customers' queries and how we could support them. And I think one of the comforts was that we weren't alone. You'd look at any retailer, just about any brand, their social media presence, everyone's taken a pounding, and I think that's also because customers have been under a huge amount of stress and pressure, and so this is a way that I can release some of that stress and pressure on someone I've paid money to, because they have to take it. So we know that we've been victims of that as well. Yeah.
I noticed when I went cycling on the road, I noticed the drivers got a little bit closer than usual. Like I was studying their boxing bag as a cyclist or a runner. Yeah. So I mean. So obviously everybody was under a bit of pressure. You've looked like you've done some exciting things. I mean, there's buckets of scale that's quite exciting for any business to look at, because you're looking at efficiencies. But I mean, was there anyone that you saw locally that you felt was inspiring you? Were you seeing areas of inspiration from the local market, or were you more looking internationally and seeing opportunities there? Do you look?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, because I think that to an extent there just wasn't time to look. But what I did find interesting in this, maybe not so much inspiration, but definitely encouragement, was how many relationships were either strengthened or formed in this time, and it just felt like that people were more willing to reach out. So right in the beginning of lockdown, I suddenly kind of was mining my contacts for, what are you doing? How are you operating? How are you opening? Are you opening new stores? What are you doing digitally? Are you able to deliver? And how I think a lot of those relationships were accelerated rapidly. And just to learn from other companies, not because necessarily any of them were shining lights. I mean, I'm sure there were in different ways, but more a sense of solidarity. And it's interesting how how quickly that ramped up and how quickly it looks like it could fall back down again if we're not deliberate to maintain it. My wife is actually one of 6. She's got 6 siblings, or 5 siblings in her around the world, and they set up these regular Zoom calls with their family all over the world, and that was working really well. But it's suddenly become a lot harder as people have started going back to work and they've got other engagements. And oh, sorry, I can't make today's call because I've got this other thing that, as the world's opened back up, some of those relationships are struggling a little bit. So I think that in this time, I've connected with a lot of other retailers, physical retailers, and who are also doing online and figuring that out, and a sense of let's put competition aside, not that we're even necessarily competing with all of them, but let's put that aside and let's figure out how to survive this together. And that's been quite an exciting thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's good. And I mean, do you think that you got some of that because when you went into retail, you didn't have that experience of retail, and so you learned to be brave or leave your ego behind and sort of reach out to people and ask for advice how things are going? Do you think that?
I mean, there could be that. The interesting thing with physical retail is I'm actually on the board of the South African Council of Shopping Centres, and so I'm quite new to this retail and shopping centres. But I think because we had a bit of an online story, they asked me to get involved in that, and I think I've found that in physical retail there is a lot more. There's a lot more of a sense of sharing and openness. Maybe because there's less of a sense of competition, and particularly if you think of shopping centres. If a shopping centre in one city or one area gives advice to another city or another area, they're not. Why not? Why don't we make retail better? And online is pretty cutthroat because we're very close together. I can just open a new tab and go shop with you, and so the competition in the digital space potentially makes less of a collaboration and less of a sharing. So I think it's maybe not unique to us. It's maybe more just that retail, at least retail in South Africa, does seem to be more supportive. And you see a lot of movement as well. People who used to work in the kind of landlord type of space are now in the retail space, or vice versa, or that move between properties or between retailers. And so because anyone in next year might be working for someone else, everyone seems quite friendly and willing to share and willing to be open, which I've really appreciated that part of our industry.
Yeah, I think we all need it, right? I think it's brought out sort of the best in us to listen to other people, hear their views, and be a bit empathetic. So, I mean, what do you think of the skills needed for the digital landscape? Because what I'm seeing is that you obviously had a lot of skills in terms of building an e-commerce business. You have a lot of retailers who are now driving towards e-commerce. You have that expertise. One of the challenges that I see in South Africa is there isn't that many organizations doing e-commerce well. I think you mentioned it as well. How do we upskill the people so that we can take advantage from this opportunity? What are you seeing as a way of doing that?
Yeah, it is.
No one Amazon to do all of it.
Yeah, it is a real challenge, and we. I say we. So Shane and I, who started Yuppiechef, before that we were doing. We were building websites, doing e-commerce, doing online marketing for other companies, and Yuppiechef was kind of born out of us wanting to do something for ourselves, and so we got it. We kind of went that way around into it. I think one of the challenges for retailers in South Africa, because most of e-commerce, most of the growth in e-commerce, particularly in South Africa, is going to come from retailers who invest in online, because that's where the majority of retail is in South Africa. And it's difficult because I think that if you are a tech person going to work for a South African retailer versus going to work for a South African tech company or even an international tech company, it's quite hard to attract that talent. It's quite hard to make it as appealing, particularly because for retailers in South Africa, e-commerce is only 1% or 2%. It's not even the major thing. If you proportionately allocate time around the boardroom table or around the exec table, e-commerce is going to get a few minutes in the hour-long meeting. There are some forward-thinking retailers who are obviously over-investing, but even if you over-invest, it's still a small part of the business. So I think that over the last few few years, it's been difficult for retailers to attract really good internal teams. And I don't think that e-commerce is something that you can really outsource. If you do, it becomes a separate part of it's a separate thing. And I think my view or our view of omni-channel retail is not that you sell online and you sell in a store, but omni-channel retail is that we are a single company. Because the customer sees us as a single company. So we need to operate as a single company, and everything needs to be one platform, one process. If I walk into a store and I deal with an assistant in the store, I should get the same message, the same capabilities as if I phone the call center. I should be able to handle a return or look up what's on a voucher or help me with my registry, whichever channel I work through. And if you've outsourced e-commerce and it's being done somewhere else, it's just never going to be as integrated as if it's done internally. But the challenge is that internally, how do you build that expertise? So I do think it's a very difficult problem. I think the advantage potentially that we have right now is this acceleration that's happened. And if we can maintain that acceleration, that if I've heard from certain retailers that, e-commerce was 3%, now it's 10% or 15%, like suddenly it's significant. Suddenly it's a big part of the business, will we now actually invest enough into this part of our business? And maybe that over time stimulates the skills development that's needed.
So, what informed the thinking to move to retail? Was it the numbers? Was it the money? Is it that? Because, you started off in digital, so you saw a digital future. How did you get to the omni sort of idea? What informed that? What happened? Was there a story behind that? Some pain?
Yeah. No, this is the story I've been used to telling for a few years, and suddenly people aren't as interested in the story in the last few months. But yeah, the story goes that we started online, and we certainly believed that e-commerce was the future. We had this line that we've been quoted saying is that in 10 years' time, nobody will go to a physical store to buy something they know they need. And that was about 10 years ago. And you know what? People still go to physical stores. That I think we weren't wrong to think that e-commerce and online was going to be big. I just think we were wrong to think that it was going to completely dominate everything else as quickly as it was. And if you look at digital transformation in certain categories, let's talk about writing a letter. And you do that, and we've been doing that for 100 years, and suddenly email comes along. And once you've sent one email, you're like, I never want to write a letter and go to the post office ever again in my life. It is such a radical transformation that I never want to go back. Or, going into a bank and dealing with a bank branch to do something like, make a payment or transfer money or whatever it is. Once you've experienced online banking, you never want to go back again. It's so radically better on every category that that's it, I'm done. I'm done with ever going into a bank. Once we've shopped online, we go back to shopping in stores. It's not, from a customer's perspective, it's not like, wow, I've been shopping in physical stores for the last 40 years of my life. Yesterday, I shopped online for the first time. I'm never going into a physical store again. It's just not that much of a radical difference that it's going to wipe out the other channel. And I think that's where we perhaps got it wrong, is that we just thought that this was so obvious that it was going to take over. And Yuppiechef so we're 14 years old now, so go back sort of 3 or 4 years. We've been doing this for 10 years, and e-commerce was still only 1-2% of retail in South Africa. And you think, like, why are we so stubbornly refusing to serve the other 98% of retail in South Africa? And we would meet people, and I would say, so what do you do? And I say, I work at Yuppiechef. And they go, oh, Yuppiechef, I love you guys. Oh, you guys are the best. You got such nice products, and I've entered your competitions, and I get your newsletter. And I say, oh, what have you bought from us? No, I've never actually bought anything from you. And you think, like, well, how can we be a brand that is so loved, but we're still missing out on people who purchase things in our category, but they just don't always buy it online. And so there was that, what is happening generically. And then you look at our own brand, we would get calls, our customer support team would receive a phone call, and someone would say, hi there, I'm standing in Sandton, and just tell me where your store is. We'd say, no, we don't have a store. And they'd say, oh, I really thought Yuppiechef had stores. And I think this idea that, you introed this by saying we were Yuppiechef.com and now we're just Yuppiechef, is that our customers just expect Yuppiechef is a retailer. Yuppiechef is not an e-commerce company or a physical store company. Yuppiechef is a retailer. And sometimes I want to go to the stores because it's Friday afternoon and I've forgotten someone's birthday and, I need something right now. Or I've got this physical thing and I just want to take it back somewhere because it doesn't work and I'm so frustrated. Or browsing, the idea of if it's my wife's birthday and I don't know what to get her, so let me just go and I'll just walk around and let me be inspired. That's really difficult to do online. It's really difficult to go through page after page of, seeing a thumbnail and a white background, as opposed to standing in front of a wall of products and going like, wow, that looks beautiful, I'm going to buy that. So there's different needs that we have for shopping, and our customers see us as a single entity, and so we should serve them as a single entity. And so we weren't convinced, but we were convinced enough to give it a shot, and we opened the Willowbridge store in 3 years ago, 2017, and it worked. Customers came in, and I remember the first day we were standing in the store watching all the customers browsing, and this one wife said to her husband, like, wow, this is so convenient. And we think like, what? Compared to like sitting in your couch, in your underwear, ordering, and we'll deliver it to your door. And yet this was convenient for them. There are times they wanted to get in their car, drive to the store, pay for something, and walk out with it. Like that, at times that feels convenient. And who were we to deny them and doggedly say, no, the only way you can buy from us is if you go online. And so that's that was the start of the journey. And we got to 7 stores last year, was our 7th store in October. And we certainly have plans to continue, but we're just going to kind of see now what happens in the environment.
So, I mean, I see a lot of organizations who are doing great things, and quite often they have like a massive transformative purpose. And I think yours is something around, having great customer service or world-leading customer service, both in, throughout your brands or different brands. And so for me, one of the things that we're trying to do is share best practice with other organizations. And we're not seeing enough other organizations in South Africa having that same sort of mantra. So if you're an organization, you're starting out, or if you're a big organization and your customer service isn't that good, what advice or what principles do you bring in? Because Yuppiechef is driven by, you and the team, but obviously that culture is created through some principles. What are those endearing principles of customer service that you're bringing through? You mentioned you don't pay your sales agents commission in the stores, and you've sort of explained that because it's self-interest. How important is things like incentives and those sorts of things to your culture?
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack there. So I'll just start talking and we'll see where it goes. One of the things is not necessarily advice, but if I just talk about the origin story, Shane and I start Yuppiechef in my lounge, and we had no money. We were kind of doing some consulting work for other companies just to pay the bills, and we launched. We go live with Yuppiechef in 2006, and we have 32 products from one brand, and it's out there. And how do you get someone to buy from you in that environment? When you open a store in a physical location, on day one, 1,000 people walk past, and 20 of them walk in and 3 of them make a purchase just because you're there, just because you exist and you sell something, and it was kind of convenient because they were walking past and they bought it. So prices, even if someone else on the other side of town was selling it cheaper, it doesn't matter because they're there now and they may as well buy it. And if the service wasn't so great, well, I can pick up the product and I can see what it is and I'll make my own decision. So I think a lot of retail doesn't really need great customer service. And a lot of businesses in general don't always need great customer service. They exist they've got some kind of monopoly in some way. I mean, and I use that word potentially liberally, but it's like, often we don't really have a choice. We're choosing between, what do we got now? 3 cell phone companies. And the difference between them is not so great, hugely so, whatever is the deal at the moment, and I just go for it. But starting an online retail company in 2006 in South Africa in one category with no money for marketing, no monopoly of any kind, it wasn't our own products, what we were selling, you could get in other places. that I think we had this real sense of that if we get a customer, we have to treat them so well because like this is all we've got. We have to, and I kind of I equate it to the cactus in the desert. Like if it gets a drop of rain, it's just got to it's got to hold on to it. It's got to store it. And you know, it's not the kind of plant that's in the jungle where there's just rain every day and it's got abundant resources. We really felt like if someone is brave enough to shop with us, like flip, we've got to thank them for it. So we started handwriting cards in the beginning because we were like, I cannot believe that you actually trusted this online entity called Yuppiechef. You know, thank you so much. We're real, I promise. We're real people. Here's our handwriting that proves it, to actually win that customer over. And we had a friend who was a marketing consultant, and he said to us, you know, it's really all about word of mouth. And we're like, but we've only had like 10 customers ever. You know, how many people can they tell? And he said, you know, just don't worry about that. Take the money you would have spent on marketing. And one of the first things we did was free delivery on anything. Like be genuinely generous, like a generosity that isn't with terms and conditions apply and an asterisk. And, you know, like if someone buys a 50 Rand spatula and it's in Kuruman and you deliver it, like, I think the customer gets it. Like, wow, this company is generous. This isn't a trick here. This is something real. And then when they want a 10,000 Rand coffee machine, they come back to us. So how can you be generous to win someone over when you don't have anything else? So that was our origin story. And I think that we've always just taken the approach of what type of experience would I want when I'm checking out on the site? Do I want to have to register before I check out? Or do I just want to be able to check out? Like, do I want to give them my ID number? No, I don't want to do that when I check out. That feels like an invasion of some sort of privacy. So what type of experience would we want if we were shopping? And let's build that, because if we do that, like that's really our differentiator. So I think that, and you spoke about the sales commission in the stores. It really grates me when I've been in a store, I've made a purchase, and then someone comes running up to me as I'm getting to the checkout and like sticks their sticker on my box, you know, to kind of pretend like they helped me with the sale. It just feels icky. It feels like, I don't know, I'd just rather have someone who's serving me because they feel part of what's happening, part of what we're doing as a company. We have a group profit share, you know, so everyone is going to benefit from everyone's success. So I'm as incentivized to send you to another store, or send you online as I am to make the sale in this store. So we try to create the systems and the structures and the culture to do that. But we've got 150 people now, and we spread out around the country. It's obviously harder than when it was 2 people in the lounge, and we don't get it right every time. And maybe there's people listening to this podcast who are throwing something at the radio or however you listen to podcasts because they didn't have that experience. It's hard. It's hard to get it right at scale across you know, many thousands or tens of thousands of customers. But we certainly still consider it incredibly easy for a customer to leave us and go to someone else. You just open a new tab in your browser and you're gone. So if we don't look after this customer, they're gone. There is no lock-in in e-commerce, and that certainly drives a lot of our thinking and behavior.
For sure. And I think some of the other things that, I mean, if I look at other territories, the States most significantly, you know, their postal system, their ability to deliver cheap and quick and on time sort of enhances that experience. I mean, we know the guys at DHL are really trying to move into the rest of Africa and support things like this. What other sort of challenges are you seeing with e-commerce in this environment that you see can be solved? Because I think the one thing is that there seems to be, you know, entrepreneurs thrive where there's problems to be solved, and there's certainly enough problems in Africa to solve them. But in terms of the e-commerce, I mean, we've sorted out the funding, that the you know, the payment sort of gateways, the fintech is fairly good now. I would say almost leading Africa, and South Africa's leading that. Would you agree? Or?
Well, I mean, payments was definitely one of the things that in the early years I would get very frustrated by, because it was something that's so fundamental to our business, and yet we have no ability to make it any better and fix it in some way. And we're a lot better. You know, the kind of 3D secure, verified by Visa, that type of process was very clunky in the beginning and very poorly implemented by the banks and by the kind of banking regulators. Banks serve but it is better now. And then there are also alternative payment methods. And so that kind of ecosystem has evolved around e-commerce. Delivery is another one, which is which is an ecosystem which we don't physically drive anything to a customer, because South Africa is a very big and spread out country for us to personally deliver to. So we do rely on it, and that ecosystem is still in a kind of transition phase. 20 years ago or 30 years ago, couriers were all business to business. They picked up something from an office in the day and they dropped it off to an office in the day. That's what a courier was. And it was 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. And then e-commerce comes along, and their whole business shifts from business to business to consumer. So now I'll probably pick it up 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, but now I need to deliver it to a customer who is at work during the day, but at home in the evenings, and actually would rather have it on the weekend and would like to know down to the hour which slot that you're going to deliver it in. And so suddenly you've got a whole different type of service that needs to be created from scratch. And when e-commerce was quite small, certainly going back kind of 10 years, there wasn't necessarily enough to drive that to every corner of the country. But you're starting to see that develop and scale in some way. And you've got the almost the alternative delivery types of companies that are cropping up and making it possible. And even something like Uber Eats, which is now fetching from physical locations, not just food, but other products, and sending it, almost sort of solving that last mile problem by using retailers as the depots. So you've got all these creative solutions that are coming, which is only viable when an industry reaches a certain scale. And I think we're in that place now. So I do think you're going to see an acceleration. You've obviously also got the actual software, the ability to create a website. When we started, we had to do it ourselves. There just wasn't anything that exists. Now you could probably, on your own, in your evening, create an online store tonight. So a lot of that is developed, and I think that's what's going to certainly accelerate things pretty quickly.
So I saw also Facebook just started doing something as well now. Like everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, so to say. I mean, what do you see the future of e-commerce and retailing? Is it different? Is e-commerce and retailing different? Are they aligned? Are their futures coming together or drifting apart?
Yeah, it's a very subtle question, a well-worded question, because retail is not e-commerce, but even within retail is a big category. If you think of retail, covers a loaf of bread, a new motor vehicle, a airtime, jewelry, wedding cakes. Like, what exactly is retail? And so I think we almost also fall into the trap of making generalizations that apply. I'm not sure I'm going to buy my next couch online. Maybe forever, because I kind of like to sit in the couch before I bought it, and that's an incredibly clunky thing to deliver to me, for me to sit and realize, actually, I don't like it, please take it back. So to say, to kind of paint the whole of retail with the same brush is probably is too simplistic. I don't think we can do that. So retail is going to evolve into being more and more omni-channel or more and more online, depending on the category and depending on the type of goods. And some of it's going to happen very quickly, and some of it's going to happen slower, and that is inevitable, and it really is happening, and it will happen. Whether, even in the most advanced economies, online sales, a proportion of total retail is maybe still only 15%. So I think we're not getting to 90% in the next few years. It's still going to be a long time, and there's still going to be stores. There's still going to be malls and high streets and strip malls, and that's all undeniably going to continue. Even though COVID this year has shuffled things, some of it will return back to normal. But e-commerce is interesting because it also covers the non-traditional retailers. It covers the person who makes some art and craft thing at home and just wants to sell it online and get it out there. They have no interest and no need to have a physical retail presence, and they're going to exist purely online. And I think what you might see is that you're going to see the kind of pure play online retailers internationally, someone like Amazon, locally someone like Takealot, who I think will stay pure play online retail. Amazon now does have they bought Whole Foods Market and they have a few of their own stores. But if you look at the totality of what they retail, the overwhelming majority is still pure play online. And then you've obviously got the physical retailers who are going to have a bigger proportion of their sales being online. But then you've got this kind of other category in the middle, which is just the sort of the democratization of the ability to sell things. What that category, though, is probably not going to be things with a barcode. It's not going to be things that I can directly compare, because then I'll probably go to someone else who can sell it cheaper and has a bigger delivery network. So that kind of non-traditional retail is going to be all the things that people make or manufacture or whatever they have themselves, and e-commerce opens them up to sell it, but they're not competing directly by trying. Yuppie. I don't think Yuppiechef could start again now, selling other people's products.
If you started again now,
no, I don't think it would work.
Would you go digital, e-commerce, retail, or would you go some other direction? Is there anything?
So if you take, when I say Yuppiechef couldn't exist now, Yuppiechef started selling other brands. We took brands that existed. QZ Pro was our first brand, and then Global Knives, and then early on would be Le Creuset, and these other brands that existed. You just couldn't buy them online. And we took those products online for the first time. And so we took products to a market who wanted them, and online, you go and buy it from us. That doesn't happen now, because everything that has a barcode is available online for sale through another retailer, through the brand themselves, or through a pure play online retailer. So the idea that you could start another Yuppiechef selling other people's products as a standalone kind of specialist online retailer, I don't think that could exist. I think that's done, and certainly not two guys in a lounge, that wouldn't happen. I think that people who make things or have their own brand or whatever it is can set that up to sell online directly to the public. And that could be something that they have made. They've figured out how to make a new water bottle, and they get it manufactured in China, and they just want to retail directly. They don't want to retail through someone else. That could work. Or it could be some type of difference. Probably, maybe if we're starting now, you could go into like DIY food stuff at home, how to make your own biltong at home, and we're selling the spices and the things that you need, or make your own this. It's just a non-comparable product. It's not something I can get at another retailer. It's something which I've kind of put together, or I live in Cape Town, and maybe I'm going to go and find all of the people in the winelands that make interesting things, from olive oils and whatever, home products and clean things that maybe don't have access, and I'll kind of collate those all together and sell them through some type of channel marketplace. I think that's what you'll start seeing now, but they're just buying a product with a barcode online, having delivered to my door. That is going to be dominated by the bigger retailers, because they've realized now that they have to be online, and then the access to capital to be able to buy stock and products and get it delivered. They will dominate that, or you'll have the pure play online retailers who obviously are already doing that and sell everything imaginable.
So if you were back to being on your couch, what would you be looking to do
today in 2020?
Yeah, like as a young entrepreneur, or someone who's maybe been retrenched, or there's lots of people who are in a lot of pain right now, and are looking at the new opportunities, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, are you seeing it in South Africa? Are you seeing it looking global? Are you seeing it? How are you seeing that?
There is a lot of opportunity online. There's no doubt about it. There's also an immense amount of competition, and I think what I would suggest, I'll go down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but I think it's relevant. What I would suggest is you have to figure out, the bigger the pie that you bite, the more the competition is going to be. The smaller the pie that you bite, the less the competition is going to be. So what size of pie do you want to bite? If you decide, I'm going to make the next search engine that's going to allow everyone around the world to search for all the world's information. It's an enormous pie. If you get it right, you're the next trillionaire, but you're also competing against Google. Or if you decide...
Businesses start small, like Jeff Bezos says, start small, think big. Isn't that?
Yes, but you've got to also be aware of, when you start small, who are your competitors. And this is the Peter Thiel's got a book 0 to 1, which I often quote the very beginning part. I spoke earlier about monopolies, which is there's no profit without monopoly, because when there's perfect competition, all profit gets competed away. So you have to think about, like, if I'm in my little neighborhood and I decide I'm going to provide some sort of local service, I'll pick up all of your clothes and take it to the dry cleaner. Who am I competing against? The best company in New York. I'm not competing against them, because they're not here. They're not doing that. And so I'm biting off a small enough pie where the competition is less. And the trouble with online is that we move online and we don't realize that I'm competing against everyone in the world. So, I'm going to provide English lessons online. I'll help people speak better English. Like, I'm competing against everyone in the world who can speak English. 1 billion people I'm competing against. If I say, I'll come to your house in my neighborhood in Cape Town and teach you English, one-on-one person, well, I'm only competing against the people who can go to your house in Cape Town and teach you English in person. So I think it is about deciding, online, we're a predominantly online company. I'm passionate about online, but the danger with online is that we bite off too much. We try and compete too big. And so, Yuppiechef started, we were South Africa, and we were only kitchen, and we were, delivery, we were only e-commerce. We kind of decided that's what we were going to be. We weren't going to be every category in every country around the world. We sort of bit off something and we said, that's it. That's what we're going to do. And so I think that the danger with your Jeff Bezos quote is to say, well, I'm going to compete everywhere on everything. I'm just going to start small. I think you'll be wiped out there. You got to decide, I'm going to compete in a small space, and then we'll see where it happens over time, where it goes.
So, are you seeing the future of South Africa as bright with lots of opportunities? Where do you see Africa, South Africa?
The challenge, what I've seen, and maybe you've seen it similarly in the last few weeks, is that people have either been the busiest they've ever been in their lives, or they've been sitting at home, probably unemployed or about to be unemployed. Is that a crisis time like this ends up kind of bifurcating the economy, even more so into the haves and the have-nots. And so my answer, the stats which now say GDP in the first quarter dropped by 15% or something. And the reality is that it's not like every company dropped by 15%. It's that a bunch of companies dropped by 100%, and some companies grew by 50%, and on average, it was minus 15. So is the future bright for South Africa or for Africa? For some people, yes. For some people, it's very dark. On average, we're going to kind of head out somewhere I think there's going to be a long struggle for a long time. Are there opportunities in South Africa and in Africa? Absolutely. Are people going to suffer because of this immense inequality in society? Absolutely. And so I guess it's choosing to take on. I'm willing to take a risk. I'm willing to try and build something, create something that hopefully succeeds for me and looks after my family, and hopefully also then has a spillover effect into many people around me. But I think it's too simplistic. I think in a lot of the more developed countries, in a lot of Scandinavian countries with huge social nets, you'd probably say, if everyone is going to be fine. And some people will succeed a bit better. I think in South Africa, you're going to say there are going to be some people who succeed incredibly well, and there will be many people who are going to continue to struggle for a long time because the inequality in our country is so real and so deep.
For sure. Yeah, we've got some challenges, I think. I think also some opportunities, the young mobile marketplace we have. I mean, there seems to be this flavor that entrepreneurship, either by default or under pressure from COVID, is coming big time in Africa. What advice would you have, or what are your principles of leadership as an entrepreneur that you would share with young entrepreneurs? Because you talk about risk-taking, but there's, risk-taking is related to how much finance or financial backing you can get. Some of these guys just aren't able to get that access to finance. Some people are unemployed, so they don't also have that luxury either. But some people will never get jobs because there just isn't those opportunities, so they're going to have to do something. What would be your sort of advice for up-and-coming entrepreneurs? Principles for success?
the challenge with any entrepreneurial journey is certainly my experience and what I've seen around is that it always takes a lot longer than people think, certainly than we think. I think there's maybe a handful of stories, and maybe it's because those ones end up getting turned into movies or books that we read them and we think that's the standard, is that maybe I can quit my job, or maybe I've just lost my job, or I've got enough to survive for the next 6 weeks, and then so this thing is gonna make it. It's gonna make it big. Yuppiechef for Shane and I, it was 5 years before our salary came from Yuppiechef. It took us 5 years of working, and by then we even employed other people and we had offices, but we still needed to be supporting ourselves through other work that we were doing. We still continued to consult to other companies and do work for them, because it was a 5-year journey just to get to the point where now we could stop all our other work and Yuppiechef paid our salaries. And what I see very often is just an unrealistic expectation of how quickly it's gonna. The thing that I'm embarking on is going to do. So, obviously that means if you can get access to finance, just being aware of how much is going to be needed and being careful of taking on finance, knowing that whatever it is, it's got to last a very long time, or you're probably going to have to go back and ask for more. And therefore, how much control of your company are you going to end up giving up? So there's obviously that. Or if you don't have access to raising some sort of finance or capital, it's just how long can I support myself? Before this thing that I'm growing is going to support me, and then make sure it is a very long time. And I tell the story of growing a spinach plant, and you grow the spinach plant from a seed, and you're really, really hungry. So as the first bit of green pops through the ground, you snip it off and eat it because you're so hungry. And then you wait, and a little bit of green pops through the ground, and you snip it off and eat it. You're going to kill that plant. You have to let it grow. You have to let the leaves be really big before you start eating from it, so that it can sustain itself without you devouring it. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, I think there's this thing needs to support me really, really quickly. And so to think a lot longer term, and that this is going to take quite a long time, and then to have the kind of resilience and the tenacity to keep going, because no journey that's going to be over a number of years is going to be smooth. There's going to be, every year we kind of think, well, what's going to hit us this year? And 2020 was certainly a doozy, but every other year has also been massive things that have hit us. And so it's like, well, we're going to get through. For me, I'm very grateful that it's been Shane and I on this journey together as partners. That where that is possible, I know that partnerships are very difficult and they come with their own challenges, but there's certainly been days when I wouldn't have got out of bed and tackled the day if I didn't have Shane who was there to sort of support and encourage it, and vice versa. There's days where he wouldn't have been able to do it without me. So where that is possible, I would certainly recommend doing it in a team. And yeah, those are probably the two primary things that I would say.
I mean, often I think of the word hard work, because I think it comes down to you get late night. I mean, no one wants to work late nights. We all have families and other things we want to do, but it really has got to be about putting in those hours.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? And the other thing I was thinking is that resilience side of thing is how do you stay from packing it in? How do you stay the course when everybody's telling you give this up?
Yeah.
But how do you, it's like that 1 meter away from the gold type of digging the trenches, and you're 1 meter away from the gold, and the guy gives up and the guy takes over and mines the gold. But
yeah. I mean, so on the hard work side, I had my first son in the January of 2006, and we started Yuppiechef that year. I mean, we launched in the August, and so and we were running Yuppiechef while still doing work to kind of pay the bills from somewhere else. So it was an incredibly difficult period of time, and I think about how little sleep I had and how hard I worked, and I wouldn't wish that on myself now. Now I feel particularly lazy in comparison to that. So yes, there's an enormous amount of hard work, but I do think you kind of, if something needs to be done, you do just do it. I don't think it's not really, it's sort of an involuntary reaction, because there's nobody else. There's no one who can say, well, I don't feel like going into work today. You are it, so you do keep going. In terms of the resilience and packing it in, I do think it's about team, and it's about if you set your alarm clock to get up and run in the morning, and the alarm clock goes off at 6 o'clock, you think like, just, not today. But if you know that someone's waiting outside and about to ring your doorbell, you get out of bed and you do it. So it is about, I think that's resilience probably comes a lot from having external people who are in some way you're involved with or accountable to, whether it's an investor or a partner or an employee or a supplier or even customers, is a sense of this is bigger than just me. So yeah, and that probably is the case, but also it's not for everyone. I think like that's the other thing is entrepreneurs could start and realize, you know what, I'd rather go work for someone else. If everyone on the planet was an entrepreneur, it wouldn't work because we can't have, some businesses need to grow to be bigger than just the people who founded it. So not everyone's a founder. So that is something which I suppose there shouldn't be any sense of real failure or guilt or shame of I tried something and you know what, I actually was a lot happier and a lot more comfortable when I was a piece of a puzzle and not necessarily the one in charge, and that's got to be okay as well.
For sure. It was great catching up. I see we're basically out of time. It's hit the mark. We really appreciate your insights. I could spend all day chatting to you, and no doubt we'll go for a coffee and chat afterwards. I'm not sure. I also had children very young. I was 20, just turned 25 when I had my first boy as well. And I remember those days of, I said to him the other day, I started drinking coffee then, and I know why, because I was working very hard and getting no sleep. And I don't know if I could do that again. He's 20 now, so I don't know if I could do that again. So how life has changed. But I think that for me, this Corona has sort of, when it happened, I realized this is the calling of all entrepreneurs. This is what's going to separate real entrepreneurs from those who want to be entrepreneurs. And I knew it then, and I sort of knew that lockdown, that 3 week, I looked at what happened with China, I wasn't convinced it was going to be 3 weeks at all. I sort of said it's going to be a 3 to 6 month plan. It's obviously longer than that, I think, now. But I think it's really great to speak to you, to get those insights. I wish you the best of luck. I think you're doing some great stuff. My wife spends way too much money with your company. And it's been fantastic to meet you, and congratulations on the award last year. And keep on doing what you're doing, man. It's inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.